Good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our Salesforce admin training. Today, we're going to continue with our getting started with Salesforce, and we're going to be looking at security controls and sharing models. This is one of the most important aspects of Salesforce because it helps you to understand how you can make certain records, data, and fields visible in Salesforce. I'm going to explain what that means shortly. Before we get started, I want us to go through what we are expected to know in this module. So this is a continuation of our configuration and setup, but it's geared towards data visibility and records visibility. So Salesforce expects us to know, given a user request scenario, apply the appropriate security control based on the features and capabilities. For instance, how do you make data visible in Salesforce? What are the sharing rules? What is the meaning of sharing roles, subordinates, hierarchy, report, and dashboard? In addition, Salesforce expects us to know, given a scenario, determine the appropriate use of custom profile or permission set using the various profile settings and permissions. Again, all these are based on the exam guide. If you'd like to know about the exam guide for your admin, you can go online and you can go to the Salesforce certification exam guide and you can access whatever I'm training right now from the trailhead. Also, you can read through what the expectations are. So we're still here and this is what I'm teaching in the last 2-3 days right now. Okay, so now going back to the slide, I like to break things down so I can be more objective whenever I'm teaching. And this is the breakdown of what you're expected to know today. You need to know the standard and custom profiles. What is standard? What is custom profile? And why do we need them? You need to know object level security. What's an object and how do you prevent data within an object from being accessible by other people in the org? You need to know the meaning of field level security and how you can set it up. Okay, let's say the profiles allows you to do something. What if you want to extend the ability or the permissions on the profile? You need to know what permission sets are and how to create permission set groups. Role hierarchy, when you have a manager, how can you make a manager see data that a subordinate cannot see? The role hierarchy would be responsible for that. So Salesforce expects us to know all this and be able to use this during our org setup. As an admin, you will just be adding these controls, but you might not understand the architecture behind it. However, as a consultant, you need to know what kind of architecture, what kind of permission do you want to implement within an org. To get started, I will go to trailhead.salesforce.com. This is the beginning of everything. If you're just joining us, this is how to get started, but I hope you've watched the previous videos. To create the org or to go to your org, you go to the hands-on orgs. Hands-on orgs is where you create a playground, a dummy Salesforce org, okay? It's like a sandbox where you can do everything that you would get if you had to buy a Salesforce license today. So I created a playground previously, and I'm going to launch my playground. So now that I launch my playground, if this is your first time, you might not see this application. Most likely, you're going to see this application. So this is probably what you will see if it's your first time of launching a playground. All you need to do is go to the app starter menu, and you'll be able to switch to whatever application Salesforce has created for us. Now that we have this application, I would like to, before I go into today's topic, I would like to just walk you through certain things I feel you should know. Again, previously, I told you all these are tabs. They are objects on a tab. Okay, so all these are objects on a tab. In Salesforce, what is an object? An object is something that acts like a database. It's like a table in a database where you store records. An object is something that acts like a database. It's like a table in a database where you store records. What do I mean by that? If you have an Excel sheet, the typical way of creating data is to go to the next row and you have all those data in there, which is fine. However, in Salesforce, you don't call it Excel sheet, you don't call it spreadsheet, you call it an object, okay? So the row is the records which you have created. The rows is the record which you have created. So right now we have 15 rows. In Salesforce language, we have 15 records. We have 15 records. This is an object, it's called the lead object. This is a row. This is one record, and we have 15 records. The columns are called the field. The fields in the lead object. So when you have an object, you have fields, what they call the columns in Excel, but it's called fields in Salesforce. Now, you go into a particular record by clicking on the link and you go to the details of that record. This is a field, okay? And the field value is Babatope Olajide. So the lead owner is a field and the value of that field is Babatope Olajide. Phone number is a field and the value of that field is 850-644-4200. So as you can see, you have an object. After you get an object, you have a record. After you get to the record, you click on that record and you have fields, data in those fields. So you've seen 3 levels of information. The first is the object, which holds all the data, okay, which holds all the records you have. Then you have one record itself. Then you have fields, which has one record, one data for that field, one data for that field. Lead source is phone inquiry. This is a data for the lead source, okay? So now that we have this information, let's go into what we want to learn today. In Salesforce, we have ways of preventing data. As you can see, data can come in different forms. It can come at the object level, it can come at the record level, and it can come at the field level. So if you want to set up data, if you want to prevent data, we have different ways of security control. Yesterday, I mentioned password policies. Password policy, it's a way of preventing people from coming into your organization. So, from accessing your organization with a username and a password. That's a way you can prevent people from accessing data. So the first one is username and password, okay? Then you have what they call profile. Profile determines what the user can see. So when you're creating user yesterday, we click on users and we go to new user. When you're creating a new user, you have the required fields. The required fields are the fields that are required in order to create the user. One of the required fields is called a profile. Without a profile, you cannot create a user, meaning that for you or for a user to access Salesforce, a profile is required. A profile is required for that user. What are profiles? Profiles are a way of securing data in the system. The profile gives the user permissions to do the things they can do in Salesforce. What do I mean by that? When you have an object, the reason why I can see this object and I can see the records in this object is because I have a profile that allows me to access the record, to access the object, to access the field. The profile is the guard of the user. Whenever you have a profile, it determines what the user can do. It determines what the user can see. It determines everything pretty much the user can have access to. Yes, profiles can be limited. However, for you to protect your org, you need to give the right profile. Otherwise, everyone would be able to see certain things that they are not allowed to see or permitted to see. Now, for this example, I will go into profiles and tell you more about profiles. In Salesforce, we have what they call the standard profile and the custom profile. The standard profiles are profiles that were created by default when you buy a new Salesforce or when you launch a new Salesforce org. The standard profile were given to you by default. You cannot edit a standard profile. You cannot edit a standard profile. How do you know if a profile is standard? You will check this and you will see if it is a standard profile or not. If this is checked, if the custom field is checked, then it is a custom profile. If the custom field is not checked, then it is a standard profile. The standard profile are given to us by default. In order to create a profile, we need to clone an existing profile. In order to create a profile, we need to clone an existing profile. We cannot create a new profile without an existing profile. Why would Salesforce prevent us from editing a standard profile? The reason why Salesforce prevents us from editing a standard profile is because they wouldn't like us to change the settings or the recommended settings for a particular set of user. What do I mean by that? When Salesforce gives you marketing user, they give this marketing user the settings that are required for a marketing user point of view. However, according to your organization settings, you might probably have a different definition for a marketing user. Let's say Salesforce say a marketing user should be able to access campaigns, a contact, accounts, leads, and opportunities objects. But you feel like, no, my organization is different. I don't want a marketing user to see my leads and opportunities objects. So Salesforce says, okay, instead of you saying, I want to edit what I've given you, why not just clone it and give the user your cloned marketing user profile? This is the recommended way of creating a profile because it gives you the baseline for what a marketing user can do or can see. However, you have the liberty to change this. So now going back to the definition of profile, we have standard profile and custom profile. So now if you're creating a new user, most likely the user would be a standard user. A standard user is someone that, is just a standard user, like someone that works in your organization and you want to give them the basic things that you expect them to have. That's why Salesforce call it a standard user. So for the benefit of this training, let's clone the standard user. And we want to create a profile for our accounting department. Our accounting department, we want to ensure that they can see certain things, okay? I'm just gonna call it accounting department profile, okay? Accounting, or let's just call it customer. Let's call it customer, okay? Customer profile. The customer profile, we expect them, ideally, we should be, when you have a user in the system, it has to be more of your org structure. So my customer profile might not make a lot of sense to you guys. So we can call it accounting because it makes better sense to call it accounting department profile. Okay, it makes better sense that way because you don't give your customer license into your Salesforce. Okay, you don't give customer license to your Salesforce. Salesforce license is very expensive, and giving customer license is just totally I'll call it stupid, but then again, you can use a different word for it. Profiles are just what gives the accounting department. So what does this mean? It means that anyone that is given the accounting department profile would have the ability to see certain things. I'm going to change this view Okay, I'm going to change this view. Yesterday, I showed you how to change the view by going to user management settings, and you disable enhanced profile user interface. Okay, then you refresh this. Then I go to profiles, and I have accounting departments. You will see that the view is now different. I like to work with this view, but sometimes people have different views they like to work with, but this kind of like makes learning easier. So now that you have this, as you can see, we have expanded every section of profile view. What does this mean? It means that I can control everything a user that is assigned to this profile can see and do in Salesforce. It means that I can decide whether this user gets to see opportunities, leads, accounts, contacts in Salesforce or not. Now, let me tell you what this is all about. In Salesforce, for you to prevent access to objects, you need to edit the profile of that object. You need to edit the objects in that profile. So for me to prevent a user access to my opportunity objects, I need to ensure that opportunity is unchecked when I'm editing this profile. But before we do that, let us assign a user to this profile. I'll go to users and I'm going to edit my test user. Previously, I gave my test user a standard platform user. I'm going to edit it and I'm going to give this user, I need to use Salesforce. So first of all, I need to deactivate this user so I can free up my license. Okay, save. The reason why I'm deactivating, according to our yesterday training, you are freeing up a license. Now you edit, and this is active. I can now see Salesforce license, and I'm going to allocate the accounting department profile. As you can see, the accounting department profile appears whenever we create, as you can see, the new profile we created appears automatically whenever we create a new profile. Okay, so whenever you want to assign a new user, you need to make sure that the profile exists. Then you can assign the profile to the user. So now that we have an accounting profile for this user, let's go into the accounting profile. And let me show you how to prevent access to the opportunity object for this profile. You click on edit and you scroll down to where the object settings are. In Salesforce, we have what they call visibility of an object. The profile controls the visibility of the objects. If you do not have access to the object, you cannot even have or see these records. You cannot see the records because you cannot even have access to these objects. How do you control it? You scroll down to where the object is and you look for opportunities objects. So I'm just scrolling down to opportunities, or I'm going to Control F and I'm going to look for opportunities to make it easier. Okay. And I'm going to look for the object called opportunity. Now, when you have options to disable object access, you have what they call the CRED options. In Salesforce, access to objects can be disabled right off by unchecking everything from this list. Okay, now that I've unchecked everything here, by the time I save this profile and I log in as a user that has this profile, you will not be able to see the opportunities. Okay, I'm going to save this. And before I save it, I'm going to show you another thing you can do to prevent access to that object. Okay, I'm going to go to opportunities and I'm going to say tab hidden. The tab hidden means anytime a user that has this access, this profile, will not be able to see the opportunities object. It means the tab for opportunities has been hidden. In addition to that, you have two other options, meaning that if this tab is currently hidden, you will not be able to see it. However, the other option says default on or default off. Default on meaning that anytime the user logs in, the user will be able to see the opportunities objects. Default off meaning that anytime the user logs in, the user will not be able to see the opportunities object. However, the user can look for it and add it. How does the user look for the opportunities object and add it to the tab menu? The user will go to the right-hand side and click on edit. The pencil icon there means edit. Right now, you have the default settings of this profile, the default tab settings of this profile. If you want to add more items, if the current object is not displaying, you can add more items to the tab. I will show you how that works shortly. So the first thing first is I have made it tab hidden, and I have disabled access, the object access to the profile. Now I'm going to save. To test this, I have two options. The first option is I can just log in as the user. But as you can see, there is no login access policy enabled for the admin. Yesterday, I told you about login access policy, whereby the admin can log in as any user and see what the user can see. I click on save and I go back to user. I should be able to see the login as this user. So once I click login as this user, I will be able to see what the user can see. As you can see, it says login as a test user, meaning that the opportunities is gone. I can no longer see the opportunities tab. As you can see, the profile determines how to control this. The profile determines what the user can see. So anytime you're struggling to find out why admin can see this, but the accounting department's profile user cannot see this, this is most likely the reason. Okay, I'm going to log out as this user, and I'm just going to refresh my screen. Anytime I log out, it's going to log me out of the entire org. So next time I'm going to be using incognito to test. Okay, so I launch back the application, and now I want to make tab visible for the profile. I want to make opportunities tab visible for the profile. So I type in profiles and I go to accounting department profile. I edit the tab and I'll make it tab. I'll make it tab hidden, tab default off. Okay, I'm looking for opportunities. Initially we make it tab hidden. I'm going to make it default off. Default off meaning that that user will not see the tab on the tab list. However, the user would have the privilege of bringing it back on by just adding it to the list of items on the tab. To demonstrate this, I'm going to open in an incognito. Okay, and just 1 minute. I just wanted to copy the URL so I can have it. And I launch this again. So now we don't have to be logging out and logging in, okay? So the first thing first is I will make sure that I have the username of that user. I'll go to setup. And I think the username is BlackForceDemo, so we are good, okay? The username is BlackForceDemo@gmail. I'll just copy it there. And the password which we used yesterday, I have it. And I'm just going to paste it there and I log in. So now we don't have to log out, log in again, okay? So now, as you can see, I go back to my sales app, and it is currently off. However, because it is tab off, I can bring it back to life. Previously, tab hidden, you cannot add it. But tab off, you can add it by just going to the edit at the right-hand side, the pencil icon. You click on the pencil icon. You click on add more items. You go to all, and you look for the opportunities object. Okay, let me refresh. Okay, did I save that? Just give me 1 minute. Let me check if I save it. Profile. I go to tab. I edit. Opportunities. Default off. Yeah. Default off. And you can bring it. Sorry. So default off, you can bring it to the screen. Let me go to the tabs. Just 1 minute, okay? I just want to check the read. And I need to bring this item to view, okay? Opportunities, and you add. The reason why we couldn't see it was because if you've taken off the read, you cannot have access to the opportunities, okay? So we needed to at least have a read before we can even have access to it. Like I said earlier, the profile determines what you can see. The minimum access you can give is the read access. The read access means that, okay, I want this user to be able to see opportunities, to read records in an opportunity. Okay, I want this user to be able to read record in an opportunity. That's why we've given the read access. Okay, we've given the read access on the opportunity objects.